G'day and welcome back to the vlog number 66, which is 6 in French and Ichini Sanchi Go Roko in Japanese. There you go, you've learned something today. What I'm going to talk about today, well, I'm going to talk again about regulations. You know that because it's just the subject du jour, everyone needs to know them. But first of all, I want to show you something. Now, we read in the newspaper every day about these drone risks, drones flying near airports and, aeroplanes are going to crash, people are going to die, property is going to be destroyed. And so if somebody gets caught flying a drone near an airport, they get the book thrown at them, and quite rightly so, because, it's just unsafe. And it's the people who do this that are causing problems for the rest of us. So what do you think would happen if the reverse happened? Let's say you were having a meeting of model aircraft, aka drones, and the area was NOTAM, which is NOTAM is a notice to airmen. It basically advises full-size pilots that there is a risk or a danger or something they should be aware of. And if the area where the drone meeting was being held was actually on an airfield, but the airfield was closed, specifically closed for that event, and it's closed by the issuing of a NOTAM and by the placing of white crosses at each end of the airfield. This is an international convention. All over the world, pilots know there are white crosses at the end of a runway, then it's closed, it's not open for use. So what do you think would happen if there were a whole bunch of people gathered to fly model aircraft or drones on an airfield that was closed and a NOTAM had been issued? What do you think would happen if a full-size aircraft broke all the rules and landed there? Now we know what would happen if a drone user landed on an active airport without permission. What if the reverse was true? Don't you think that the pilot of that aircraft should also be raked over the coals, have his ass kicked into the middle of next month? I think so. I think that should happen because it's a two-way street. It's no good all the drone flyers obeying the rules meticulously if full-size pilots are able to break their rules with impunity. So I'm going to show you some footage now. This was taken in February here at the Tokoroa Airfield in New Zealand, where there was a very large model aircraft meeting, a jet meeting. It's held every year, and they did everything by the book. They had the airfield closed for 3 days. That's trois. That's ichi-ni-san in Japanese. 3 days it was closed. It was NOTAMed, so any pilot thinking of flying to this airfield should have looked up the NOTAMs and seen, oh, it's closed. I can't go there and land. It was also they also had white crosses out at the end of this runway to clearly show any pilots that hadn't checked their NOTAMs that you couldn't land on it because it was not available for landing. It was unsafe to land on this runway. But let's take a look at what happened during that meeting. Now, I noticed this Cessna 172R flying overhead, and then I heard on the radio, I heard him call up and say he was going to land, and I thought, that's not right. You can't land. The airfield is closed, it's NOTAMed, and there are crosses out. So what on earth are you doing? I watched it circle around. It came onto downwind leg, turned onto base, and then it landed. Biggering belief. Now, the model jet flyers were setting up. There were gazebos and things on the area, and there'd been a jet running just a few moments earlier, but there could have been jets flying up and down the runway. This was one of the days when the model aircraft were operating, so this pilot didn't know if there were jets there or not. He didn't even realise the white crosses meant close the runway, and he didn't check his NOTAMs. So this is a major safety issue because, as I say, if there had have been jets operating up and down that runway, there could have been a really nasty accident. Now, we're not talking about a 2-kilogram Phantom 4 made of frangible plastic. We're talking about jets, and some of these things weighed over 20 kilos, and they can fly at up to 200 miles an hour. Now, if one of those comes through the front of your 172R, it's going to do more than just scratch the paintwork. It's going to ruin it's going to terminate your life. Even if it had a glancing blow, a 172 struck by a model that size, the pilot could lose control, it could peel off into the spectators, into the hangars that are here. There was huge potential for loss of life and damage to property. So what do you think happened to this pilot? Well, as far as I'm aware, he got a jolly good talking to. Yeah, a jolly good talking to. Now, do you think that's enough? As I said, if I had done this, if I'd landed a drone at an operational airport without permission, I think I would have got a hell of a lot more than a jolly good talking to. As I say, my ass would have been kicked into the middle of next month. I'd have been fined, might even have been imprisoned because it's such a dangerous thing to do. But when a full-size pilot does it, he gets a bit of a talking to. It's ridiculous. Now, just to give you a bit of background on this, the aircraft involved is operated by a flight training school here in New Zealand called Ardmore Flight School, I think it is. They operate just out of Auckland, further up the country. Now, this was a student pilot who had been cleared to go solo doing a cross country. What flight school on the planet should be operating without telling their students what the white crosses mean before they go solo, and that they should check the NOTAMs before they go solo? So this reflects very badly on that flight school. If you're looking to get a pilot's license, don't go to Ardmore Flight School, because they don't teach you anything, obviously. What a ridiculous situation. Now, another student also did a landing at another airport near here during the Model Airplane Nationals. It was closed. There were people on that runway, and another student pilot did a touch and go in the middle of it all. I mean, our aviation regulator, civil aviation, they keep bitching and moaning about drones and people doing the wrong thing. Well, I'm sorry, but until you get the full-size pilots following the rules, don't come grizzling to me. Someone in charge of a full-size aircraft can cause a hell of a lot more risk to person and property than someone flying one of these, right? So why are you bitching about these? You won't let us fly them over an empty field in the middle of nowhere without the property owner's permission, when you've got student pilots repeatedly breaking the rules, endangering property and life. And you've got flight schools that aren't teaching them what they need to know to fly safely. And you're letting those flight schools continue. I'm sorry, CAA, but that's just bad form. It reflects terribly on you. You want us to follow your regulations, you've got to earn our respect by showing that you police the regulations within the full-size community as well. Oh, and by the way, after that plane landed, it turned around and took off again on a closed runway. Unbelievable. Right, let's get on to something else, but it's still regulations, I'm afraid. Some bad news for Germans. If you live in Germany, then you need to know that the Munich police are looking for 2 drone operators who used a camera-equipped drone to spy on a young woman sunbathing naked on the roof of their building. Allegedly, because they don't have the footage. They don't know whether the guys had, it says camera-equipped drone. How do they know it had a camera on it? I don't know. But this has brought up some changes. Now they're changing the rules in Germany, and basically, if you're flying a drone that weighs 2 kilograms or more, you're going to need either a pilot's license or a certificate from what they call an Air Sports Association, which I assume is something like a national model flying body. Here in New Zealand, it's Model Flying New Zealand. In America, it's the FAA. A lot of these organisations have like some kind of certification thing. Here in New Zealand, we have wings, and I think in Australia they have wings. In the UK, they've probably got something similar. I don't think America has, the FAA hasn't done any kind of wings or certification system, but probably in Germany they have the same thing. So you have to be able to prove that you're able to safely fly the craft. Good idea. I mean, it's not a stupid idea. It's a good idea. That's only for drones that weigh over 2 kg and less than, or if you go up to 5 kg, then you're going to have to get permission to fly your 5 kg or bigger drone. Specific express permission to fly it. I don't know if that's on a per flight basis or just overall or whatever, but okay, they're toughening up. Won't affect most people because 5 kgs is a pretty heavy drone. If it applies to models, it's probably a bit more of an issue because, you get yourself a decent, or a 50cc gas plane. I mean, it's just a model aircraft, but you'd have to get permission to fly the damn thing. How's that? Now, if it's greater than 250 grams, so anything that's greater than 250 grams, this is a bit of a thing where the Canadians will be empathising with you, German people. You're going to have to put your name and address on it, okay? And it has to be in the form of a metallic badge that won't get destroyed in the fire, so they can track you down. And I find this kind of ironic that the reason they're introducing these new regulations is to improve privacy. It's mainly a privacy issue, because they're scared people are going to be flying their camera-equipped drones over houses and things and spying on people's backyards. But you've got to put your name and address on it. Well, doesn't that compromise the owner's privacy? Do you really want your name and address flying around the sky and then, perhaps you land somewhere and someone grabs it for the same reasons that the Canadians don't want it? Why would the Germans want it? But the German government's saying on the one hand, you must not fly these things without your name and address because it could be a privacy issue. And on the other hand, they're saying, but you must put your name and address on there. You don't got no privacy. Oh, I don't know. Regulators, desk pilots, again. Now, also, if you have any kind of model or drone, unmanned aerial vehicle, and it's got a camera on it, you can't fly it over anybody's house without permission. So, except your own, I suppose, because the permission is implicit. But yeah, you can't fly it over anybody's house, I assume, or property without permission because you might be spying on them. It doesn't have to be a high-definition recording camera, even a normal FPV camera. Verboten, can't do that. So it kind of cramps you a bit, but I mean, you shouldn't be flying over people's houses anyway. An empty, vacant, it should be occupied property. I think it should say occupied property. So it would be like a residential house. But if you're in the middle of nowhere with a wide open paddock, why would you need permission? Well, our CAA says you'd need it, but I don't see why you would. Okay, so, and then finally they've made a statement, the FDA, I think it is in Germany, have made a statement that they're going to be pushing for regulation in transponders. So if you're flying, I don't know what weight level, probably 2 kg and above, maybe even below, you'll have to register and you'll have to have a transponder in there so they can track you on radar. I don't think they quite understand how that works. But yeah, that's what they're expecting to do in the near future. So if you're a drone operator in Germany, it's going to get tougher and tougher. Now, Sweden. Across in Sweden, the land of smorgasbords, they are having good news. There is, who is it? The Minister for Justice and Migration, Mr. Morgan Johansson, has said that they're going to try and wind back the rules a bit. They're too tough. And he says that the issue of privacy is already being addressed by their Data Collection Act. They don't need to specifically regulate drones with cameras because it's already covered by other regulations. And of course it is. I mean, my goodness, you cannot do anything to damage someone's property or injure or kill someone without breaking a law that already exists. We know that. Lots of people have already been prosecuted for doing stupid, lame things with drones under existing regulations, not drone-specific regulations, but existing regulations. I think the guy that got some jail time for crashing into a woman with his drone in America, was it Seattle? I think he got some jail time. That was wasn't done under any specific drone regulations. He was prosecuted and imprisoned under regulations that just apply normally. I think it was causing an injury or assault or grievous bodily harm or something. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't a drone-specific regulation. So we don't need all this crap. In fact, all the stuff that's been rolled out for drones is pretty much advisory. You know, don't fly within so far of an airfield. Well, that's good advice. It's good advice. It's not going to stop people who are hell-bent on causing problems or people who are ignorant and don't know the regulations, but you don't need that as a regulation. If someone endangers an aircraft by any method, any means, then most countries have laws to enable you to prosecute them. Whether it's a drone or whether they're firing rocks with a slingshot at aircraft taken off, it's all the same. It is endangerment and you can go to prison for it. So why do you need drone laws? The regulators, I believe, would be much better focused on education rather than regulation. And as if to make my point, here in New Zealand, I see that a visitor to the country was fined $500 for landing their drone on our harbour bridge in Auckland. A huge, it's a bridge that spans the harbour. It's quite a large bridge. Their drone landed on one of the lanes of this bridge. Why did it do that? Well, the operator says that the DJI's automatic geofencing system kicked in and detected that it was flying in a prohibited area, so it landed it. How safe is that, DJI? Your safety system causes your drone to land in the middle of rush hour traffic. Really? On a bridge? Really? Is that really safe? I don't know. But the most interesting thing about this situation is I've been telling CAA for over a year now, you've got to include your little safety brochure in the immigration package that's handed out to tourists as they get off the plane, because a lot of people come with drones now. I look on YouTube, I type drone New Zealand into YouTube, and I find heaps and heaps of videos posted by tourists to this country. They bring their Mavic or their Phantom in their luggage, and they go and take all these wonderful shots, and most of them are illegal because they contravene our drone laws. If our Civil Aviation Authority was giving this little brochure out at a cost of, 10 cents per brochure, then the people would be educated. They'd know, because most of these people don't intend to break the rules, they just don't know what they are. So while the aviation regulators here are complaining about a lack of education, lack of knowledge, they're not doing anything to address that. Yet they're still going out and fining people, in this case $500, for breaking rules they didn't know existed. They are more interested in punishing than preventing. And that's not a good look. How do you gain the respect of people if you are not so much interested in telling them don't do that, but just saying, you've done that, give us some money? That's ridiculous. So again, really bad form for our civil aviation regulator. They've screwed this up wholesale. There is going to be some really bad things happen here, and if it does, it'll be their fault, honestly. Because you can't say ignorance is no defence, because you can get rid of 99% of that ignorance by simply giving people a 10-cent brochure as they get off the airplane coming into New Zealand, but you won't do it. I've asked you on 3 occasions to do it. You've completely ignored me. And now you've seen for yourself, you must acknowledge that a lot of the problems are caused by people visiting the country who could be educated in one fell swoop with your little brochure. You won't do it. Why not? Are you just interested in collecting the money? Is it a revenue thing? I don't know, but I'm not happy about that. What do viewers think? What do you think? Is that a sensible thing to do? Shouldn't they be educating? You tell me. Right, and in some more cheery news, DJI has brought out a new Phantom, the Phantom 4 Advanced. Woo. What does it mean? Well, I don't know why they bothered. It's sort of a slightly down-spec'd Phantom 4, and it's $150 cheaper. But it doesn't have the rear-facing sensors, so that if you're sort of doing a pull-out shot and there's trees behind you, you'll crash into the trees with the cheap one. And I think something else, I think there's a slight difference in the camera, I'm not sure, but yeah, most of the people that I've seen commenting on this have said, just spend the extra $150 and get the P4 Pro. Don't shortchange yourself. So I don't know, I don't have one, I can't really do a comparison, but yeah, it's something to know that it's out there. So why are they broadening their product line? They already started consolidating by dropping some of the earlier models, but now they're adding one which is really just not that much different. And of course we've seen the Spark. Well, we haven't. We've seen a photo of the picture of the Spark. What is the Spark? I don't know. Is it a selfie drone? Is it a racing drone? We don't know. We'll find out. A lot of speculation at the moment, but you know, maybe they leaked those pictures on purpose just to get an idea of how much interest there'd be in a drone that small. That's not unheard of. A lot of companies have done that. But yeah, if you're a DJI fan, but this whole, as I mentioned before with the Harbour Bridge thing, this DJI sort of geofencing thing, this prohibited zone thing, it's a pain in the backside. I've had a couple of people come out here, want me to show them how to use their expensive DJI Phantom drone, because in this town the only place you can legally fly a drone is either your own backyard or the airport. So they bring them out here, can't use them. There's a big red circle, can't use it. So I can't teach these people how to use their drones because we're at an airport and there's no way to circumvent that easily. And we can't even go down the parks because here in this town we're not allowed to fly in the parks. So I can't, it's shooting people in the foot. It's supposed to be a safety thing, but it's already caused one near tragedy by making a Phantom 4 land in the middle of a busy motorway on a bridge. And it means I can't teach people safety things about using their Phantom 4 because I can't do it here at the airfield, which is the only legal place to do it. It's like, what's going on here? People need to investigate more thoroughly whether their safety systems are actually helping or hurting the whole issue of safety, because it's ludicrous anyway. There's a 1 kilometre radius around this airfield, which means you can go and stand on the end of the airfield and fly. The very place where you shouldn't be flying, right on the approach and departure paths, you can fly. But you can't fly 1 kilometre to the sides where it's quite safe. Or you can fly, up to, you can fly anything past 1 kilometre to the sides, and it's completely safe to fly up to, the boundary of an airfield on the side, because planes aren't flying down the boundary, they're flying off the ends. So, these people, again, it's more desk piloting. People just don't have a proper appreciation of what the problem is, so they come up with the stupidest of solutions, which sometimes actually cause a problem for safety. Let me continue on this vein. That footage I showed you of the 172 landing at the airfield here while it was closed, it was sent to CAA so they could see the evidence. CAA commented apparently that the guy, which is me, who took the films, obviously had a radio. Why didn't he just call up and tell the pilot that the airfield was closed? And you might think, well, that's a jolly good idea. Why didn't I do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the last time I did that, the last time there was a plane coming into land and there were jets using the airfield, I used the radio to tell the pilot it wasn't safe to land, for obvious reasons, right? And that got me in trouble with CAA, because even though I had the necessary qualifications to use a radio telephone, I was accused of being an unauthorised air traffic controller. Yeah, because I tried to save someone's life. So I'm not using the radio anymore, because I'm not allowed. They've specifically said you may not transmit on the radio. So if that guy had come in and a jet had been coming down, what would I do? Would I risk prosecution by breaking it to save a life, or possibly several lives? Or would I stick to the rules and stick to what I've been told and watch people die? This is where regulation is ridiculous, when it's done by desk pilots, when they don't understand the problems. And this is where lame regulation puts lives at risk to such an extent it's unreasonable. As the examples I've cited to you, We have drones landing on a harbour bridge because DJI is trying to make things safe. We've got me unable to warn aircraft that it's not safe to land because I've been specifically told you may not transmit on the radio even though you have an RTOC and you've had it for 40 years. Really, come on. So it's the whole situation is crap. We need to do something. And so now I'm going to talk about a bit of activism. I'm going to shake things up now. We see so many reports in the media of drones being, pilots saying, oh, I nearly hit a drone, near misses. The near miss is the big words or big phrase of the last few years. Near miss. Every time a pilot sees a drone, it's a near miss. Maybe he's just browsing through a copy of Drone Weekly. Oh, there's a drone. File that as an incident. Near miss. I saw a drone while I was flying my airplane. That's that craziness of it. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. So we have this situation where the media has latched onto this and they realise, ooh, nothing gets people clicking more than fear. So we'll put the fear of drone strike into them, and every time they see something drone near miss, they'll click on that and we'll earn some money from the advertising. And it's got so bad that some of the less reputable mainstream press, such as the Daily Mail, they published a story in which the headline suggested that Prince, what's his name, William is it, the heir to the throne, was almost killed because a drone flew within half a second of his helicopter, half a second away from hitting his helicopter. When you look a bit more closely at it, you see there's a load of bullshit. The drone, we don't know that there was a drone, but he wasn't on the helicopter at the time. There was no actual incident. It was like, what? It's just clickbait news headlines. So we've got to address this. We're a community, we don't have any global representation. We're all fractured. I mean, there are small groups here and there who, and DJI, I've got this little thing they've set up to try and get people, all working together to have a say, but that's really only going to be for their customers, I think. And so we as individuals have to take responsibility for making sure the public are not misinformed. Now, if you have a newspaper and it puts one of these stories up, drone near miss, drone pilot dodges drone at 20,000 feet, all that sort of crap, it's not true. It's complete rubbish. Then if the newspaper story or the newspaper site allows you to put a comment on there, go and put a comment and tell them, no, this is wrong, and tell them why. I mean, just diffuse the situation, put some common sense into it. Some papers allow you to write opinion pieces and submit them for publication. Do that. Do it. Write a submission piece telling people how you've been flying your drone safely and you don't spy on people and whatever. If you're a part of a club, invite the media down to your club to see you guys flying your models and your drones or whatever safely, responsibly and happily, and get some good news stories out there so the public aren't brainwashed into believing all these drones are evil. We have to do that. That's our responsibility. If we don't do that, then the regulators, the desk pilots, are just going to keep tightening the screws because they don't understand the problems. They don't realise why their lunatic regulations aren't fixing anything. Yes, and there's several bits of information you might want to use if you're going to be countering some of these crappy stories in the media. First of all, the only serious academic study ever made into the risks associated with drones hitting full-size aircraft was done by the George Mason University in America. It's a study based on bird strike data, based on the number of hours drones have flown, based on aircraft movements, and the figures are quite stupendous. It shows how tiny the risk is of someone being injured by a drone striking a full-size aircraft. First of all, the likelihood of a strike is incredibly low, and the likelihood of that strike causing significant damage is even lower. So when you combine those two extremely low numbers, you get almost zero number. And this is why, despite the last 5 years of warnings that drones are going to kill people by bringing down airliners, there has never been one single documented instance of a drone, a recreational multi-rotor drone, colliding with a full-size aircraft. And that's the point you must make every time there's one of these stories in the paper. Despite the hype and hysteria being spouted by the media and regulators and pilots' unions, there has never once been a verified instance of a multi-rotor drone striking a full-size aircraft. So if the danger is so very real, why hasn't it happened? Well, the George Mason University study shows you why, with mathematics, with science. And if they want to argue that science is wrong, well, that puts them in a very weak perspective. Hysteria wins, science loses. That's just not going to happen. That's ridiculous. It's silly. Another very, very useful thing to point people at is Chris Manno's blog. He's got a blog called Jethead, and he's a commercial airline pilot. He flies for one of the biggest passenger carriers in the USA. He used to be a pilot in the US military. When he left the military, he started flying passenger jets for a large US company. Now, he's written a very, very good blog on the issue of drones and whether he considers them to be a risk. He's called it Much Ado About Nothing. I'll put a link to that, and I'll put a link to the university study in the description of this video, so you can use that. Go to those pages, bookmark them, and then you can use that to counter the rubbish that the media, the regulators, and pilots' unions are spouting about this whole drone risk issue, because if we don't diffuse the situation, we're just going to keep losing our rights left, right, and centre because of the hysteria. It's regulation by hysteria. Okay, that's it from me for another boring, long vlog, which I hope I've addressed some of the important issues of the last week or two. It's been crap weather here. Man, it's been, look at this. This was taken, when was it? Day before yesterday.
Right, here we are. We're in the... Tim, there's a bit of noise then. What's the weather? It's crap.
Yeah, I couldn't even hear myself thinking. I was almost going to put on hearing protection because the rain on the roof was so loud. It's crazy. We've had tropical cyclones, storms, all sorts of things blowing through here, like flying. What's that? Can't even remember what flying's like. So yeah, it's the time of year, I suppose. We live quite a way down on the arse of the world, and so our latitude means we get a lot of crappy weather almost all year round. Summer's not so bad, but once we get to April through till December next year, it's not so much that it's snowing or cold, but it's just crap weather. It's windy and it's wet most of the time. It's really unfortunate, but hey, we'll make do. Now, a reminder, go and look at my RC Model Reviews channel if you want to see reviews about products and technology in the drone and the model field. And if you are interested in what I'm doing, then you think other people might benefit from it, then please tell them. You know, spread the word. The more subscribers I get, the more time I can spend doing stuff like this, and everybody benefits, I hope. So yeah, spread the word about this vlog and the other stuff on this channel and my RC Model Reviews channels. Much appreciated. I do have a Patreon account if anyone wants to support me. I'll put a link to that in the description of this as well. All that money is put to a very good cause, which is basically keeping you informed, keeping you entertained, and giving you information and knowledge that is pretty damn useful if you're in this hobby. So there you go. I will now get on. A lot of work to do. Spot you later, guys.